Welcome to Healing Beyond the Trauma. My name is Megan Alves. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. And this podcast, I want to break the stigma around mental health and have real, unfiltered conversations about healing. Some stories are going to be raw, even triggering at times, but they're real and they're honest because healing starts with honesty. If you've ever felt overwhelmed, stuck, or like you're carrying it all, you're not. Here, you're going to gain validation, practical tools, and a new perspective to move forward. Because healing isn't about erasing the past. It's about reclaiming your future. So let's dive in. Hey, and welcome back to another episode of Summit to Healing Beyond the Trauma. My name is Megan Alves, and I'm so excited to share our guest that's sharing her time with us today. Her name is Gabrielle Burton, and she is a podcast host. She is an author. She is a coach who has a background in amazing work moving into narcissistic and spiritual abuse. So I have about 5 million questions, but I'll rein it in for this episode, and maybe we'll have to do a part 2. But thank you so much for your time today, Gabby. It's so good to see you and spend some time with you today.
Yes. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
I want to dive right in. Gabby and I met because, what is it? May 1st, we finally have a date. So today is March 30th. This podcast will host, and as you guys listen, May 1st, we get to support and do some hosting around a women's conference. And I cannot wait until all of it is published and we're like have the final, I guess, beauty of this conference together. But that's how Gabby and I met. And we're excited to share that with you guys and more to come on that. But I want to talk a little bit. Let's start with your story, how you came down this path. And now that you've branched into so many beautiful areas, let's start with just tell us a little bit about yourself and how you are where you're at today. If you want to summarize that for us, that would be amazing.
Yeah. Well, thank you again for just the opportunity to come on. And yeah, it's been great just getting to know you and talk with you. And we do have like just so much in common. And I'm just really excited to be here. And yeah, I love what you're doing with the platform. And yeah, so where do I start? So I am a Christian licensed marriage and family therapist and have been in the field for 10 years, specializing in primarily narcissistic and spiritual abuse. And how I got into this field, it honestly chose me. I
Of course.
grew Yeah, I didn't have a choice. I grew up in the church and I'm grateful for that. Had a really great experience around, I want to say around 8 or 9 years old, or maybe 7, 8, somewhere around there. I went to the altar at church and I just said, God, take me by the hand and lead me. And I just have always had a really strong relationship with the Lord. My mom was an on and off single mom and she has 4 kids. With 3 different dads, and we moved around a lot. And so the one thing that my mom did keep consistent with us was that we were raised in the church and we were in church twice every Sunday. And so yeah, just I always had a real deep connection with the Lord, and I actually never wanted to go to the youth group growing up. I always was like in the main service like with the pastors, and I just wanted to know like what's the pastor got to say. So that was great. And I always was very wise beyond my years. And went through a lot of trauma, a lot of, moving around and all of that. But I had just this wisdom from the Lord, I think, from such a young age, but also parentification. So, wisdom and trauma, right? And
Of
so,
course. And for those of you
um,
listening, it's interesting because, I mean, it's such an honor to be able to just have these open conversations. And I would say that so many clients, high achieving clients, and those that have been on this platform, there's a lot of parentification that comes in with high achievers. And parentification, I mean, take us down. Like, what is parentification for those that have never heard that term? And I would venture to say that many high achievers and those that have been through trauma can relate, and they're like, what the heck is parentification?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's basically where the roles are reversed. And so the child is taking care of the parent's emotional needs, and your needs are pretty much like non existent or ignored. And so you learn how you have to show up in order to be lovable. And so, what I learned at a young age was to not have any needs, to be very helpful, to be very resourceful. I also was very much, a little entertainer, and I always loved to sing and dance and all of that, but that was something that I would get a lot of praise for. And so if I ever was feeling down or sad, my mom would try to get me to sing or dance, or and so it was more like, oh, I can't feel sad, or I can't have these emotions that are not comfortable for her. So then the performative side was what I had to lean into to make her comfortable. So that's really, yeah,
Yeah,
it's
and we
kind
like
of
hang on to those roles sometimes, right, as we
right.
become adults. And so as this path chose you, let's get back on that path of,
Yeah.
of course parentification came in, and then as you noticed that, how did you continue to strive down that road?
Mhm. Yeah, so around 15, I moved in with my dad in Minnesota, and he was a pastor, but also a narcissist. And that was a really difficult experience because how he portrayed outside, everybody was like, he's this amazing person and we love him and all these things. And to us, he was extremely abusive, um, just really unhealthy, unhappy, unkind, and it was just really difficult to really reconcile with what everybody else saw versus what we experienced.
Yeah.
And so I am grateful to say, though, that although he was a pastor, he was never my pastor. And so I always had, when he would talk about God or he would talk about faith and things like that, I was like, I don't know who you're talking about. That's not my daddy. That's not my God. I don't know who you are referring to. So from a very young age, I had to learn the difference between discerning between my earthly father and my heavenly father. And
Interesting.
yeah, and so it was a tough challenge though, because the little Gabby, I always wanted a father.
Yeah.
And my mom, because she was married so many times, every guy that my mom married, I would call dad. And
Yeah.
so when I moved in with my dad at 15, I was like, okay, I want to be a daddy's girl. But there was never a right way to be with my dad. Like, it was like the target was always moving, and he was very controlling and manipulative, and he would tell me what I could or couldn't wear. He would tell me how to do my hair. There
Yeah.
was just so many things that my dad would do. And on top of that, he also was trying to get me into the entertainment industry as well. So I often felt like I was a little doll that he just tried to control, and that was really difficult. So
Yeah, especially as you said earlier, I in order to kinda, like, have emotion regulation, there was a moment of performance around it. So, I would venture to say that that was pretty confusing, especially for a little cat, right? Like, how do
Mhm.
I decipher these 2? When you
Yeah.
talk about a narcissistic father, I think that narcissism is thrown around a lot, as is
Yeah.
a lot of diagnostic terms, and you and I both being in the mental health field, if somebody was to realize, and we know that there's a lot of healing that has to happen after being in a relationship or in close proximity or a work relationship with somebody with narcissistic traits. What are some of those warning signs? I mean, I'm sure little Gab didn't know, but knew something was off. But now that you're in the clinical field,
Mhm.
looking back, what would you say is some of those warning signs of somebody in a relationship or around somebody with those narcissistic traits? What are some of those warning signs?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, for one, huge lack of empathy. Like, just absolutely lacking in empathy. Another thing is, like, they want to know your vulnerabilities so that they can exploit them. I
Mm,
remember, like, with my dad, I there again, there was this huge feeling because I was parentified. I felt like I was responsible for my dad's emotional well-being. And my dad would always communicate that he wanted this relationship with me, but I didn't know like what kind of relationship he was looking for. And he wasn't there to build this relationship with me all these years. And so I'm kind of like, okay, well, I want to be a daddy's girl, but I don't know what kind of relationship he wants. And so it was very confusing because there's no boundaries. There's no separation between you and them. If you are always an extension of them. So anytime you try to set a boundary, you are seen as like selfish or there's something wrong with you. Um,
Mm.
they will make you second guess yourself when you're making choices and decisions. Um, like I said, any vulnerability that they know that you'll have, they'll tear you down because of that.
Yeah.
um Very different from who they are with other people versus who they are with you. You see such a totally different because the mask, slips with you. Grandiose sometimes. I mean, and narcissism can be like a spectrum because there's overt narcissism, covert narcissism. It just depends. But
Right.
I mean, generally underneath all of it is very deep, deep, deep low self-esteem, low self-worth. And but they put on this facade that they are so, amazing and so secure and grandiose, and they're just not. It's all very performative and fake. They don't have really deep, meaningful relationships because everything is very transactional. And oftentimes, it kind of feels like you're more of an accessory in their life than an actual person that has real emotions and needs. Um, and then I would say too, if you ever feel so like something that narcissists do, it's like narcissistic word salad. They'll say a
Mm.
whole lot of nothing. Like they'll talk at you and they'll say a whole lot of nothing, and you're just like, "Do you need me for this conversation?" Or you walk
Yeah.
away confused, like you're like, I don't know what was the conversation. And a lot of times if you feel like you need to record the conversation or you feel like you need to write stuff down, that's a good indicator that you might be dealing with someone that has narcissism. And I remember there would be times where I'm like, I'm going to record this conversation cuz this is this is crazy. Like what is happening right now?
Yeah,
So
you're
those
not
are those
sure
are
what
times.
happened, why it happened, what to do
Mhm.
about it, or if it
Yep.
even was pertaining to you, right?
Mhm.
And you
That's
just
right.
walk away much more confused than you went into the conversation. So
That's
it
right.
it's hard, like you said, like I'm so sorry that you had to experience that on the inside because,
Mhm.
like you said, the confusion that happens after those conversation and the consistent move of the target, that is so challenging. And
Yeah.
oftentimes I will hear, or have seen that leaving those conversations, it's like a drain of your own self
Mhm.
consistently taking. And I mean, not to like a cliche word, but it's, like just huge, huge kudos to you for being able to step out of it and do something with it. And that it's so hard to do because healing from that is not an easy journey.
Right.
And
Right.
and
Yeah.
seeing your self-worth, I'm celebrating you so much because I'm so thankful that you're out able to talk about this, and it's not an easy journey, so thank you for stepping into that space. I just wanna take a moment as you share
Yeah.
that to say thank you, and
Mhm.
and so tell us a little bit more as you started to kind of notice and be able, even at a young age, to differentiate that. What did that look like as you went through that healing journey?
Yeah. I would say this there were some things that my dad would just do that were just obviously wrong. Like some I will not go into specifics, but little bit like inappropriate sexual things.
Mm.
And I'm just kind of like, wait, just what this is what, it's just weird stuff that just shouldn't have been happening. And yeah, and then so there was a time where I went to the doctors and I actually like expressed something. And the way that the doctor said it really let me know that something was not right. And I just was like, okay, got it. And that was the first time that someone actually let me know that this dynamic is not okay. Because anybody else you talk to, they will say like, "Oh, your dad says you're so amazing and you're so great and he loves you so much." I'm like, "He doesn't tell me that." Like, I don't he
Mm.
tells me that I suck and that like I'm selfish for setting a boundary. So I don't, and so I just remember after that, I kind of was like, all right, clearly I'm this is not normal. This is not healthy. So one of the first things I actually did is my dad always used to have me straighten my hair when I lived with him. And I
Mm.
actually one day we are getting ready for church and I washed my hair and it was curly. And my dad goes, "Oh, your hair is not done. You need to go do your hair." And I said, "Oh no, I'm wearing my hair like this." And he goes, "Well, I don't like your hair curly like that." And I was like, "Well, it's a good thing I don't get ready for you now, isn't it?" And my curls, I was like my first like FU to my dad. So I call my curls my FU curls because I'm just
Yeah.
like, you don't get to control me and tell me what to do. I'm going to wear my hair curly. And so that was kind of my first
Wow.
kind of thing to my dad. Yeah, was taking autonomy over my body.
Yeah.
And then eventually, because my dad would tell me what clothes I could wear, what kind of nail polish I could wear, even down to like my underwear. Like it was very, very insidious.
Wow.
And so, yeah, so I did that and then I got ready to go off to college and my dad would, tell me I wasn't smart enough to go to college and all these different things. He threatened suicide on me
Oh.
because I had gotten a boyfriend at the right before I went off to college and he said that he wanted to kill himself because he thought he was losing his daughter and I was like, "What?" Like
Oh,
and then
wow.
when I told my stepmom, he got mad at me and said, "How dare you tell my wife?" And I'm like, how dare you tell your kid?" Like so, yeah,
Right.
just really wild. So I ended up getting ready to go off to college, and I remember like I just packed up all of my stuff for college, and my dad and my parents didn't help me like move out. And
Mhm.
I just left and I never went back to that house. And I mean, my college was 45 minutes away, but I just like went and I just like college was the place where everything started coming undone for me.
Mm.
I was having all kinds of psychosomatic illnesses. I felt like I was going literally crazy. Just having nightmares and all kinds of things. I literally thought that I had like a serious medical condition going on. And every time I'd go to different doctors, they were like, "Oh, it's just anxiety." And I didn't believe them. Um, n-
Right.
Not realizing how much your body will react to severe stress and abuse.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah,
at
that
one point
somatic is so
yeah.
important, and I think, so many of us do not realize that until we're so much older. I mean, we're talking about it now. I mean, platforms like
Mhm.
this, yours, I mean, we get to have these bigger conversations of how important it is to listen and start to understand what our body is doing in response to certain things. I mean, I'll
Right.
always say like Body Keeps the Score was the first time I remember picking that book up and I was like, bullshit. No way. Like, I need to check this out.
Yeah.
But it was so intense because even at that time, I was in grad school, and even at that time, I just could not realize and
Hmm.
accept how much stress and, abuse and things like that could actually do to the body, and how much
Yep.
many of us just ignore those knocks at the door until
Mhm.
we're away from the situation or until things get a little bit calmer and we're not comfortable and calm, right? And
Yep.
our body just
That's right.
shows up in such big ways. And huge kudos to you. I'm overusing the word kudos today. I don't know what that's about. Sorry. Um, but it's really so amazing when we're able to just separate, and the fact that
Yep.
your body, held on and just did what it needed to do for so long until you were separated. Wow.
Yes, yes. No, that's so true. There was one time, it's like this really vivid memory that I have of just being in the house with my dad and my stepmom because he was abusive to my stepmom too. I mean, obviously, he was
Yeah.
everybody. But I remember like one day I had walked out of the house and I just remember taking this deep breath and I was just like, and I remember thinking, I don't remember the last time I've ever breathed like that. It
Mm.
It was that's how thick the tension was constantly in that house, where he was always antagonizing somebody, attacking somebody, criticizing. He also was terrible to everybody in his church, like, he would, like, say horrible things about the people in his church, and I just was
Oh,
like,
wow.
you're the pastor. Like, aren't you supposed to pray for these people? Why are you telling me these things? Like, and so,
Wow,
and then
what a
again, when I would
layer of
sit,
confusion there, especially even more so that what does it feel like to walk out of a church and it, hopefully, you're respected and loved and welcomed, but to walk out of a church and then see someone talk
yeah,
down about those that they are to support and guide through their
that
journey.
is,
Wow.
yes. And that,
Oh,
yeah, it was a tough thing. But Um, I think for me, I was grateful that I did have God to guide me through it. And through my time at college was when the Lord really showed me the importance of mental health and spiritual health and physical health and how they're all intertwined. And so I went through the next couple of years in college, my junior and senior year, while I was away at college. I just did a lot of healing, a lot of um, yeah, just like rewiring like my brain, my nervous system, like all of that,
yeah. What did you tap
re-regulating
into
my
during
nervous
that
system.
time, if you don't mind me interrupting again? What
Yeah,
you notice your body was really the catalyst to tell you something's wrong and you need to get
yeah,
help. And
yeah.
and then and so what did you end up, if you don't mind sharing, what was
You
supportive
know
for
what's
you?
the craziest thing, I will say this, is actually having really healthy friendships.
Yes.
Deep, deep, meaningful friendships is actually what got me through that time. I made a couple of friends in college that honestly were like my sisters. They showed me what a true secure attachment felt like.
Mm,
And it was like the first time in my whole life that I actually felt nurtured. I actually
wow.
felt cared for, and like someone would actually take me to the hospital because I needed care. Again,
Yes.
growing up and your needs were not taken care of, so definitely neglected,
Yeah.
and so to have friends that really truly sat with me in the midst of my panic attacks, or literally sit next to me um in the middle of the night while I'm at times I would like pass out and like not stop breathing in the middle of the night. Like there was all kinds of stuff going on, and they
Wow.
just like were there every step of the way and never got tired of what I was going through. That is honestly what helped me a lot, was having really solid relationships and friendships.
Shout out to those sisters. My goodness. And I mean,
Yeah.
it's so hard after being in relationships like that to be able to trust another person with those vulnerabilities. How do you feel like you were able to tap into that bravery to open up to those women and
hmm
welcome that support? I would venture to say not an easy journey in and of itself.
Yeah. I don't think it, I would say, how did I allow myself? I don't know. I think it was like out of need at that point. It was like
Yeah.
either I'm going to do this by myself and I'm not going to make it, or I'm going to survive. And they showed that they cared, and I will say though, there was moments in some of the one of the relationships where there were some boundaries that like were crossed more so. And so I definitely think that it wasn't it got to a place where it wasn't the healthiest at certain points,
Okay. Yeah.
because there was, a lot being of one person was willing to take it on, right? So then there was some of their own stuff that they needed to work through. So we eventually had to like really readjust. Um, and so, and then, then providing them also the space to be able to like share like what they needed too. So it was just navigating relationships, right?
Right.
Um,
Yeah, and like
but
you said, a really important thing is really learning what healthy connection feels like and secure attachment feels like. So
absolutely,
that
absolutely.
takes work on both ends. So you really highlight something very, very important for those of you listening. It is the healing journey really is a two-way street when it comes out of relationships, out of abuse, that it is about getting vulnerable and putting the work in to it. And thank you for sharing that part, because sometimes I think we often see the rainbows and butterfly, but it's not always that pretty after trauma, that we do have to keep. And it sounds like you really actively kept taking those steps.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, when I always talk about relationships, like, you have to learn how to, set the pace, give a lot of grace, and sometimes you need space. And so those were things that, like, we definitely had to navigate in that because there was some codependency that happened in those
Of
in that relationship,
course.
and there was some, inner child work that needed to be done on, like, both ends, and there was some projecting of needs, like, there was so there was some of that too, and I would say, like, the 2nd year, things got a little bit better, in the relationship, but at the same time, I am grateful that that relationship was there at the time that it was to help me
Yeah.
get through, like, the darkest season of my life for sure.
Yeah, relationships, and you said something important too to not skip over it is your protective factor. I think oftentimes we forget how important it is that we are not we can't hold it all, we can't fix it all, nor can we place it in the hands of our therapists or our doctors to place it all, that those protective factors are really important to maintain the work on. I don't remember the study, and maybe it will ring a bell for you, and I wish I can remember it, but I remember reading a specific therapist went back in and she reviewed a lot of depression and anxiety research and
Mhm,
treatment modalities that were used on a specific population, and she realized that the one thing that most of the studies were missing was the protective factor. And they're like, we haven't
mhm,
tapped into what the protective factor does to the anxiety and depression. And as she
right,
went back with these clients, tapped into that protective factor in big ways, whether that be, you know, Jesus, whether
mhm,
that, I think I wish I can remember the study, but it was, it was an array of protective factors. I'll just leave it at that instead of trying to fill
mhm,
in the gaps. And they realized that the depression rates and the anxiety rates went down so much. And it even had
mhm,
an impact on the second generation. So if it was a mother that tapped into those protective factors, the children reap the benefits. Because just like you said, although your mom had the turbulence in the relationships, the one thing that stayed consistent was that protective factor for her, which allowed your guys' protective factor to come in, which wasn't always
yeah,
beautiful, right?
right.
And which drove you down this path, but it's huge even for the person second, generation side. So definitely wanted to highlight. Does that research ring a bell for you at all? I'm gonna have to find that.
I can't recall specifically the
Okay.
article that you're speaking about, but yeah, definitely. I mean, it's so important to tap into that even when we do work with clients. It's like what are their resources? Like and even I mean a big part of why I do work with mostly Christians is because I know that that's a great place that we can go to with them. Um
Yeah.
but yeah, I it's so hard to heal on your own, because especially when we talk about attachment work, right? And I what I love to do with like my work too is talk about how like God can give you he can be that secure attachment for you. He can re-regulate your nervous system when you have that relationship with him. And
Yeah.
so but unfortunately a lot of people they will attribute their experience with God with their experience with their earthly father. And so if their earthly father wasn't great, they might not feel very connected or safe to God. I just actually watched a documentary and it was called, I believe it's called He Calls Me Daughter, and it was just in the theaters for just a few days, and it really highlighted a lot of that about how a lot of women who have father wounds have struggled a lot with connecting with God, and how there was one girl in the documentary who had a really bad relationship with her dad, and so she didn't want to pray to Jesus because it was a male. And
Mm.
and how that really affected her ability to connect. And so all of that when it comes to attachment, secure attachment, whether clients find it through us as therapists and we provide that secure attachment, or through God or through friends, it's so important to figure out like who are those safe people in their lives.
Yeah, and sometimes it can be so hard to find, but there is, right? Like,
Mhm.
whether it be, and we have to get uncomfortable, either building friendships and creating that community for yourself, which really means
Yep,
that you have to get out there and do that work,
that's right.
right? And you had to go out and meet these people rather than, wanting to, I wanted to isolate, but no, push past that and, allowed some of that vulnerability, or getting into a community of church, especially for those, I hear a lot, kind of side note, let's touch base here, but I hear a lot of clients and people in the community that say, the church or something has
Mhm.
happened within the church has done them wrong. So therefore, fill in the blank, right? Like I'm sure you've
Yeah.
heard this story a time and time again. And so rebuilding that connection after a church or a pastor or some type of connection within the church has now made
Mhm.
it feel unsafe. And
Yeah.
so when you work with clients along that area, or as you've healed through that journey yourself, what are some
Yeah.
areas that we could tap into to help support that, and is that going back to,
Mhm.
learning how to create secure attachments again after a wound?
Yeah. I mean, dealing with, I mean, they call it church hurt. It's really people hurt, right? We're dealing with
Yeah.
people who are just all, well, you never know what chapter of life you're meeting somebody on, right?
Mm.
And I think that the hardest part is um hurt people. And
Mm.
we have a lot of people who are in leadership ministry who haven't really done their own work. And
Yeah.
that can be really, really difficult when they are leading while they bleed. And I would say also, I don't think a lot of people understand how much church hurt pastors deal with, just pastors alone, because of
Yeah.
at any given time, you got half the congregation mad at you for something, right? Because you said something that they didn't like, or you didn't say something that they wanted you to say. Like it's just, you can't win, right? If you want to make
Right.
everybody happy, I heard a quote. It said, if you want to make everybody happy, sell ice cream. Okay. Because it's like you can't you can't make everybody
Wait, but
happy.
Gabby, what
So
about those that are lactose intolerant? Like, what?
oh my
We're never.
gosh, you're so right. It's exactly. You're never going to make everybody happy, right? And so
Yeah.
I think that that can be a tough, it's just a tough field, right? It's a calling for sure. And one thing I've been thinking a lot about is you can't really do it for the approval of other people, because when you
Mm.
think about Jesus, he died for the people that ridiculed him, mocked him, and killed him, and rather free Barabbas. Okay, like, and so it's like these are the people that he came to serve. And so acknowledging that people are absolutely going to be cruel, we have to expect that and anticipate that, right?
Yeah.
Um,
And it doesn't
and at the
mean, right?
same,
Like you said,
right.
if we expect that and anticipate that, those
Mhm.
sometimes can be very difficult barriers, so to
Yeah,
say, to building a
yeah,
relationship. Because if you're
that's right.
telling me that if I go into church, I have to expect that I'm going to get hurt, essentially.
Yeah, touche.
With that being with that being said, how do we maintain the hope? And I think that the church is under a lot of pressure right now, and Christians are under a lot of and I would venture to say across the board when it comes to religion, because
Yeah,
I feel
yeah,
honored that in my space I get to support a plethora of those that have higher powers in many areas. And so if you're telling me that I have to expect getting hurt going into a church, how would I rebuild
yeah.
knowing that that could be the possibility?
I love that you asked that question
It's such
because
a loaded question.
it is a loaded question. And the truth is, yes, expect that people are going to be people, and it's your responsibility to find safe people to do life with, right? It's
Yeah.
your responsibility to find safe people to wrestle with. Because, yes, although people are hurt and messy, are they also aware and healing? Is my question. Because listen, I tell my clients all the time, I said, and when I let you down, because I will, at some point I will, right? I will fail you at some point, that is to be expected.
What an
I
honest thing
sure
to
hope you
say.
would, I
Yes.
right, I sure hope you would let me know, because there is an invitation there, because we have a relationship. So therefore, when I let you down, when I say something or do something that you don't like, I sure hope you would let me know and you'd come back so we could work on it together. That is
Right.
the invitation that you want to make sure that you have people that you are able to have that back and forth relationship with. Just like we have the therapeutic relationship, you want to have those types of relationships with people that you're doing life with. And so I also think it's managing expectations in churches as well. I had my own very interesting dynamic of the church that I grew up in. So I grew up in a church and had known these pastors and leaders for a really long time. So I had more access, more connections. And then recently I had an experience at another church where I was trying my hardest to build genuine connections and relationships because to me I'm very relational and that's I want to do relationship. I know it's messy. I understand we communicate differently. I'm just trying to understand how do we connect and relate. And what I experienced was that they were not wanting to do the relational thing. It was more
Mhm.
organizational. It was more, we can't be that for you. We operate at this high level and go mingle amongst the others out there. But and
Yeah.
that's really difficult when when I've had those experience with people in leadership, and now I'm also supposed to sit here and listen to you speak to me in a spiritual way. There was also other things that happen, and this is a big thing with church hurt is when people have shared private things with a leader and things like that. And those things were not actually kept private or confidential and actually turned
Right.
into a sermon. That happened to me several times.
Oh.
Yeah. And
Mhm.
it's not just specifically that particular church, but there's actually other spaces as well where it's very much indirect communication. And that's not how you build a relationship. When you build relationship, you go to the person directly, especially if, they have concerns or what have you. If they're supposed to be your leader, they lead also emotionally. Hey, I wanted to connect with you and check in. I've noticed something that you posted on social media and I just want to check in. Is everything okay? Right?
Yeah.
Instead of being weird or avoiding you or, just that type of stuff does not make someone feel like you're with them, right? It feels
Yeah.
like you're being judged and studied and watched. And that just doesn't is not a good experience. And so
Yeah.
um yeah, so I would just say unfortunately though, here's my thing is you have these people who are leaders, but they're not good at everything. And that's just the honest truth, right? Sometimes I also think that pastors are human, right? And
Right.
and they are gonna have blind spots and they have their protective like parts
Factors.
that
Yeah,
come up
parts.
too, right? They have their
Yeah.
protective parts that come up and I feel under attack. I gotta protect me, I gotta protect whatever.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, as a pastor and a leader, it's your job to ensure that people feel um not like they fit in, but they feel like they belong. And feeling like a sense of belonging is very different than feeling like you fit in. And a lot of times when people go to church environments, they feel like they have to fit in. And
Yeah.
that means you have to abandon parts of yourself. You have to say the right things. You have to serve so many times. There's just a certain way that they feel is the right way. And not, again, this is not across the board every church.
Of course.
I think as people grow and get healthier in your own self, find places and spaces where you do feel like you fit. But um, when you say some of the scrutiny that's happening with the churches,
Yeah.
with a lot of people and kind of across the board church hurt stuff, it's feeling like they didn't belong, feeling like they can't ask questions to leadership, uh, feeling like you're only seen good as long as you are useful and it's a transactional connection. Yeah, people things being turned into sermons instead of a conversation.
Yeah.
Those are all very common things that I've dealt with. And then on top of that, then you have like really bad counsel from pastors in regards to relational dynamics, like stay and pray in really unhealthy relationships and abusive relationships. Um, not really speaking messages that are really inclusive of just people that live in very different lifestyles and very different spaces and how people feel really judged and excluded in those messages as well.
Right.
And I would just say by and large it's hard being a pastor and being a leader
Yeah, and
in that
I think
space.
you hit on a couple things that across the board, we can even take and apply to
Mhm.
just relationships in and of itself. We can even step
Yeah.
back from leadership. We can step back even from churches because those positions are really difficult for those. And sometimes even just building relationships in and of itself can be really challenging. But in order to build those relationships, I really want to highlight emotional maturity. A lot
There you
of
go.
the things that you're seeking, right, within those connections are really hard to do without
Yeah.
emotional maturity. Being able to be
Yes.
emotionally aware for
That
yourself,
part.
let alone
Yeah.
someone else. And I think that that
That's
takes
right.
a lot of healing within yourself to be able
It
to give
does.
space and grace to somebody else that might not be there yet.
Yep.
But I don't wanna bypass how important emotional maturity in and of itself is, and if you're listening and you're like, "Okay, Megan, what the hell is emotional maturity?" That's really about being able we first have to understand our own emotions and what happens when we get triggered, when, we have warning signs within ourselves, and then we're able if you're like, "Oh, I go from 0 to 10 and there's no in between," that's a good spot that emotional maturity might need some work because
Yeah.
we're not sure. And then if that is missing, I mean, I'm going to always say therapy, right? Like find your people that are emotionally mature that can help you identify what those waves look like. Because if you go into wanting to build relationships with others without understanding yourself first, it's going to be real hard to give, and we're
That's right.
often gonna wanna receive, and
Yes.
without that healing, it's hard to give grace to those that aren't quite there.
Yes.
Right.
Well, I would say too, and what I have seen, experienced is there is this like kind of messaging of giving the grace to the leaders, but then like grace they're not even asking for. And so it's like the hurt has been done. The lack of follow through or the promising of commitment, like showing up and then nothing ever happening, right? And then
Yeah.
they just kind of assume that you're going to just forget about it. And
Mm.
a lot of that, but then when you bring it up, then hey, I thought we were going to do that thing, and then it's like, oh, your expectations are too high, and then it's like, well, now me expecting you to do what you said you're going to do, that's too much. Okay, so don't expect you to do what you say you're going to do, like, and so
Yeah.
it's kind of that part of it where you're wanting to really genuinely connect, and also give the grace, but also like you're really not being honest with me, and that sucks, and so um that gets really difficult, but like you said, it's the emotional maturity of the person to just go, hey, I know I said that I was going to get with you, and I've got to be honest with you, I am not available. Like
I
that was
overextended.
extroverted me.
Yeah.
That was extroverted me who was excited, and now introverted me doesn't want to be around anybody. You know what I mean? Like it's just,
Yes. Oh my gosh, how beautiful would that
right.
be if somebody just said that like, I would be like, "Oh my gosh, I totally have those days." That would be so beautiful.
And that's so relatable, right? Like, it's just like, that's
Absolutely.
relatable instead of, I still want to get together. I'm, da, da, da," and like that type of thing. So now I feel like I'm causing you anxiety, and,
Mm.
and now I feel responsible because I don't want you to feel bad, because take care of you. If you only do it if you want to do it, and then it's just this awkward dynamic, right? This awkward dance. And so
Yeah.
I do think sometimes too, like the church culture at times it can be very more superficial, in
Yeah.
the sense of you have so many people that they're trying to connect with, right? And
Yeah.
it's not like, it's kind of like the, hey, how's it going, but you're not actually like stopping and talking to see how someone really is doing, because there are so many other people and other moving parts.
Yeah.
And so again, that is where you quote unquote find your people that you really are doing life with. But I do think that it can feel hurtful when it feels like you're being seen as too much, or your needs are too much, when it wasn't even something that like you initiated. It was something that they initiated and won't follow through on.
Yeah.
um but like you said, it is the owning it, the emotional maturity on their part, and yeah, just healthy boundaries, I think too, and healthy
Yes.
expectations of what can you expect of me, right? Because every church has their own way of how they operate. And there are some leaders who are very involved in people's lives. That is their job, that is their jam. They love to show up. And then there's others that are that's not their role. They don't do that. And I think it's important for people to know, like, okay, this is the person that you go to for this, and this is
Yeah.
the person that you go to for that. Um, but I think also, when it comes to building a community, I think it's important that you have people that you're also just really truly doing life with. That
Yeah.
is way more effective. People that you're going to call when you need someone to come, when you have a flat tire or you need to get picked up from the airport. You're sick and someone is like, "Hey, let me send you soup." That
Mm.
probably won't be your pastor. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
probably won't. And so I just think it's about just building a deeper community, and sometimes that may not be a church, right? Like that,
Right.
and it's okay if it's not. It's okay if it's not. I think for me personally, church is who you do life with, and who you choose to build life with, and who you show up for, and who shows up for you, and all of that. Who do you carry each other's burdens with?
Yeah. Yeah. You touched on so many important points and healthy boundaries and being able to know your worth and be able to reach out to the community and know that you're worthy enough to ask for those things, right? And show up. And again, it's not transactional. It's caring and receiving care in a safe way.
Yeah.
And sometimes it is hard to find and hard to build. So thank you for painting that picture. I want
Hmm.
to switch gears a little bit again and kind
Yeah.
of lead into you have a book out there and we're switching gears a little bit,
Mhm.
but I think that this is a really important point that I don't want to miss because I love the title of your book, by the way. The Ultimate Guide to Becoming a Gold Digger, Discovering the Hidden Treasures Within. I remember
Yes.
before I met you, right? You and I are both therapists, and I'm like, oh, I always like have a plethora of therapists to refer to. And th- just as with most things, we can't judge a book by its cover. And the title, I was like,
That's right.
oh, hmm, what's she saying?
Mhm.
But really,
Yeah.
as I dove into it, I was like, oh, yes. Like, so before I bring in what I grabbed, tell us a little bit
Yeah.
about this book and what drove you down this path in and of itself.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so it's the ultimate guide to becoming a gold digger, discovering the hidden treasures within. And so it really is a book that actually combines faith and mental health. And it's so funny when I was in grad school, I would always say to my colleagues, I'm like, I'm a gold digger. I'm a gold digger. I'm a gold digger. And I say that because, excuse me, I can always find the good in a situation. Like, I'm like, I can always find a positive outcome. I can always, I'm going through something hard and I'm like, but the good in this is that, like, I can always find that. And so I just would say, I always find the gold. And so
What a
we've had
beautiful
to
resilience
actually,
factor of yours, by the way.
yes, thank you. Yeah. Anytime I would go through something hard, I would just say, God, what do you want me to learn from this? Like, God,
Mm,
what do you want me to learn from this right now? Because it's a learning lesson. And so
always.
um we had to, in grad school, we had to create our own theory. And so I called it the gold digger theory. And so it started out as just like a theory that I created, and then it turned into a book. But
Right.
it really does talk about really addressing all these different things that we go through as humans. We talk about social graces, of how we show up in the world, your geography, your gender, your race, your religion, your age, ability, class, culture, education, spirituality, sexuality. All those things affect the way that we experience the world. And
Yeah.
so I kind of take them through a deep dive of getting to know you. What are these unique things about yourself? And how does that affect the way you experience the world? Because um there's not going to be a one size fits all treatment plan that works for everybody. There's not a one size fits all scripture that, like, helps everybody through any situation, right? Like
And the
that we are.
season shifts so much. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And so, like, to me, I think the best way to do, and I take it back to church a lot, the best way to do church is to get to know people as individuals and not as like a conglomerate of people, because that there are so many individuals in a group. And I love getting to know someone individually because that's how you get to deeply know somebody. And
Yeah.
in order to deeply know others, you got to really know yourself and know your own story, your own background. And then the book also then helps people dive into like what's unique about you? What are your gifts? What are your talents? Like what is God asking you to do? Because I do think that there's a quote that I heard. It said, the antidote to loneliness is not a relationship, it's actually purpose.
Yes.
And I love that so much because I definitely seen there's this messaging around get married, find your partner, all of that, which is beautiful if that's what is
Right.
God has for you. And with the dating
And
scene and all of that, it's not fun.
yeah.
I'll speak to that. But what if that doesn't happen for you, right? Are you
Yeah.
going to sit around and just wait and wait and wait, or are you supposed to be living your life right now? And so the book really does champion people to just go, hey, like, what are you called to do? What's your purpose? Because that will definitely help you um, feel more fulfilled overall,
Right.
and also find yourself aligning with people that are more moving in the same direction. So
Yeah.
that's what the book is all about.
And I really love the overview that you gave us because one of the things that I thought about with this book is it really does touch base on what it looks like to transition in seasons, I think, and what I gathered. Because when we go through our own healing journey and actually start to learn how to find our voice, to learn how to find the good, right? Like that, sometimes that does take work. Sometimes that's not a
Yeah.
gift that we're naturally given to be able to find the good in tough situations, to ask for the lesson, to know that there's a lesson after it. I mean, you know, oftentimes it's just a skill that really needs to be worked on. But that's the beautiful part is it's a skill
Mhm.
to learn. It's
That's
not
right.
that if you don't have it, you'll never have it. And
That's right.
and that again, thinking about, you say you went back, you go back to the church and we've talked about relationship building and we've talked about like if that journey of marriage and children was your journey and as somebody who works with moms oftentimes that individual and what they tend to see themselves as shifts so big for a
That's right.
majority of women that I've worked with after motherhood and when they become a mother this identity shift that happens definitely infringes on what life looks like after, the firstborn, the second, and sometimes it changes depending, on how many children and what that looks like. And so the fact that you touch base on purpose, I think is so
Mm,
important that if we look at ourselves in one season, it's okay as a season shifts if we lose ourselves. If, you know, narcissistic relationships, spiritual narcissism happens in the church, that shifts your perception of the world. And
yeah.
oftentimes we have to anchor back into purpose and it may look completely different. And I think that that's such a highlight that I really wanted to ping in and pull out from the book as well because how beautiful is it that through season shifts and as we lose identity that through purpose we can rediscover that and how
Yes.
beautiful that can be in when peaks and valleys tend to happen as life happens. Right.
Absolutely. No, I love the way you said that. That is so beautiful. And I love that you work with moms because that is a huge, huge one where moms, they take on so much. Like, right? It's you can
Yeah.
take a hit on your career, your body, mental health, physical health, all the things, right? Like where there's just so much of the mental and emotional load that moms tend to take. Not that dads don't.
Yeah.
Um,
Dads do too,
but
right? Yeah.
yeah, dads do too, but definitely, especially, you know,
Our
given
dang
that,
hormones
yeah,
too.
hormones, hormones, yes. So I think it's like important. And I think, there is such a, when you watch like social media is difficult because you're watching all these people living their lives and then you're comparing and you're like, oh, am I not where I'm supposed to be? And hey,
Mhm.
like if the purpose that you have right now is to be a mom, you better be the best mom you can be. And how do you, like, how do you make sure that you're showing up in the best that you can, right? And
Yeah.
allowing them to be okay with that, because I do think that our society, American society, it's very still focused on what do you do, right?
Oh, yeah.
Anytime you go to a networking event, the first question is what do you do?
Yeah.
And that can make you feel like I'm not doing enough. Oh, you're doing more than you can. I've actually have amazing friends who are moms. I actually tell my mom friends this a lot, where there was a season where I was going through and I was like, just needing to make new friends. Um, because some of my friends had got married, had families and things like that. And so as a single person, it's like, oh, okay, like they can't do the things that they were doing. And so I was
No.
like, well, maybe I don't need mom friends anymore because they just always leave me.
Right.
And and I
We get
was like,
buried in the things
and
to do.
yeah, and I was like, oh my gosh. And what actually some of my closest friends right now are moms,
Yeah.
and they actually just decided like I need good friendships and I'm going to foster this and this is important to me.
Yes.
And I love that. I love that because it was like it didn't mean that just because they're in motherhood doesn't mean they're not worthy of friendship,
Yeah.
right? It doesn't mean that they don't want to have fun, because I mean they're great. They're a lot of fun, right?
Yeah.
And they just also we were aligned in values of what we wanted. We both were prioritizing friendship. And so we make time for each other. Um and so, but I think that what they had to realize was that their identity isn't just motherhood.
Yeah.
It is, I want friendship. And so therefore I have to make time for friendship. I have to schedule it out. I'm gonna show up when Gabby asks me to go, right?
Yeah.
And they're also they do a good job of they'll plan stuff too. Cause for a long time I felt like I was the friend that would put all the stuff together. And it's just really great like when you have other people that are just like, hey, I want to initiate, or I want to do that too, because the truth is we all are running our own lives and
Yeah.
and things and all that. And so it's just nice to have friends that just choose you too.
Well, and you said something a second ago, and you're absolutely right. Like, and we're going back to what you talked about before, is that it's never transactional if we look at relationships. And I'll never say relationships are 50-50. It always is. I'm trying to put as much of myself into that relationship as I can. It's unrealistic, I've learned, by the way,
Yep.
that I can't put 100%, right, of
Yeah.
myself, but nor is anybody expecting that from me. And
No.
and so it is that we're both doing the work to foster the relationship. And
Yep.
so I want to highlight something that you said, is that the value alignment.
Yeah.
Oftentimes I I think somewhere, in your book, I remember thinking that we tend to shrink, whether it be maybe the people or the experiences around us, the fear that comes after, and I'll just kind of title it in with trauma, is that we
Yeah.
tend to shrink in order to find safety. And and then as we heal through that, because there is a journey of healing after those traumas for sure, then when relationships start to be built, one of the things that I have seen and I want to highlight, as you just said, values, is that I people that are unhappy are often out of alignment with not just purpose, but their values.
That's right.
So if I'm a mother, if I'm a Christian, if I am someone who values family but also deep connections, and I am putting 100% into my family and missing out on my deep connections with friends, I
Hmm.
will not be happy because my values are not in alignment.
That's right. That's right.
And I don't think we talk enough about that in motherhood, in singlehood, right? Like, I would venture to say that you've had moments that you were pouring yourself into your book or into your podcast or into your private practice, and you were missing time with friends, which threw that
Yeah.
value alignment off. And sometimes we
Yeah.
have to like hit that pendulum pretty hard in order to realize that. But knowing our values, I don't know about you, but
Mhm.
oftentimes we have a hard time. There's a part in our assessment that's like, tell me a little bit about your values. And oftentimes, when the pendulum is, it's like, I don't. What are you asking me? What do I
Yeah.
value like in life? Right?
Yeah.
And we
Right.
tend to lose that. Have you seen that? And can you speak a little bit on how you mentioned values?
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely think that, I mean, it takes some introspection, right? And I think sometimes you don't always understand it until you like deal with someone where they're so not giving you what you need, and then you're like, that's a non-negotiable for me. Like,
Yes, the
like it's
non-negotiables.
it's the non-negotiable, like where you're you can have that in dating experiences, when you're making friendships and things like that, you start to connect with people and you just go, um like, actually showing up, like, fully is a non-negotiable for me, or,
Yeah.
texting back, like, in a timely manner, when we're setting something up is a non-negotiable for me, or, following through when you say that you're gonna do it, it's a non-negotiable, or repairing after a rupture, it's a
Oh,
non-negotiable for
yeah.
me, right? Like, it's you start to realize that, but I here's what I also will say, this is why I think it's so beautiful when it comes to relationships, is again, like my therapist has actually said you should date three people at the same time, like, and so that you're not all in on one person,
Mhm.
because that way you're not so overly invested in one person, but you have different people that you're able to actually connect with. And I thought that that was a cool, I was like, yeah, I actually like that. But I think about when you have relationships, you also have different relationships, because no one person is going to be all the things you need, right? Some person, like, this relationship might just be like your friend that you just love going and working out together. Like, it may not, we may never talk about anything financial or business, but like, we can get a workout in, right? And then you
Yeah.
might have a friend over here where it's like we love talking about God, but like, man, like, they're not somebody who I want to go dancing with, because like, I don't know if we like the same music, right? Like,
Right.
and I love, the thing is like, you want to diversify your relationships like you would your portfolio.
Mhm.
Having different people that like also bring out different parts of you, I think, is really important. But the values, in regards to, do we value one another? Do we respect each other's opinions? Do we respect each other's boundaries? Um, do
Yeah.
we are we reliable? Are we integrous? Are we authentic? Do we
Yeah.
communicate openly? And do we hold each other, do we both value accountability? Because I value accountability. Some people don't like that. Some people are like, I don't like being called out. And I was like, that's how I love. I don't know. I don't know.
Right.
I don't know how to love you
Oh, I love
differently.
accountability. You
Yeah,
are like my soul sister, like, call me
yeah,
out, make sure, right? Yes, I love
exactly.
that.
I'm all about it. I'm like, listen, like, if I have something in my teeth, please tell me. Like,
Please.
don't have me out here looking crazy. Like, just let me know so I can fix
Yeah.
it, and I'll do the same for you. But again, some people don't like that, and that comes down to, again, their own work, right? Where
Yeah.
people experience you through their own filter, through their own lens, through their own trauma, and sometimes it's also context, all the things. And so,
Yeah.
all the way down to values, it's making sure that you're not going to be the same person, and that's perfect. That's great. You don't have to be the same person,
No.
but do we actually want? Are we moving in the same direction? And
Mhm.
do we align on the things that matter most to us?
Yeah.
And if not, then we probably can't move forward in a relationship,
Yeah.
and that's also okay. It doesn't mean that it's no forever. It just might mean that this might not be the time that you guys can, build anything.
Yeah. Well, I want to say thank you so much for sharing so many just nuggets of knowledge and your story with us, because it's not without your story that without your story, we would just miss so many of the beautiful parts of you and how you have grown to this person. And I purposely did not ask you about your book until we started recording, because I was so interested in knowing how that journey transpired into this book. And I think, you know, it's so eye catching, the title, but the deep message underneath is something that all of us can learn something from no matter what season that we're in. And I appreciate the work that you put into that to help us tap back in to all of the things that we talked about today. So thank you
Thank
for
you.
that. You
Yeah.
have a podcast. Tell us your podcast. Where do we
Yes.
find you?
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for that, by the way. And I want you on my podcast. So you guys have to come and watch Megan on my podcast.
I say yes.
But it's
I say yes, and I will show up.
awesome. Yeah. So it's called Hosting Heaven, and it's on YouTube right now. And basically, it's just a conversations around faith and mental health, and just yeah, combining the both. And I think talking about, I always like to say, you want to keep one foot on earth and one foot in heaven, because I think sometimes it can get to a place where people over spiritualize things, and I'm like, wait, that was trauma. And so we just want to we just want to make sure that we are having these conversations. We also we get into some juicy conversations. We talk about people leaving cults. I
Yeah.
love, like, I don't know, I'm like obsessed with like studying cults. I think it's like very interesting.
Yeah.
And so
And
people
it's
will
something
talk a
to
lot
really
about
keep in mind of, right?
it
Because they
is.
are still around and,
They are.
like nothing to definitely, you know, it's not one of those things that we just hear on TV, that it is something to still keep
No.
your eyes open to, ears to the ground
Yes.
to, but also not
Yes.
be, totally closed off to everything because
Yep.
as you said, to tap into those words is that you're worthy of setting healthy boundaries and being mindful
That's
of
right.
who you're building connections with. So,
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's helpful to hear people's stories and experiences. What I'm grateful about everybody that's come on, they're very they've done a lot of their own healing work, and so it's really nice where they talk about like what got them into those places, what were they navigating, what were some of their childhood wounds. And so those, I
yeah,
think it's just a helpful conversations to listen to. Sometimes people are laughing at themselves, and that part is also a part of the healing journey, right? Humor can be
yeah,
healing, but also very insightful, because you might find yourself going, that's so me. And I
yeah,
can relate to that. So that's really what the podcast is. And I
yeah.
also, give a space for just other leaders in the community to come on and share about what they're doing in the city, and just a place to really connect and heal together.
Yeah, and, Gabby, we'll leave this as a to be continued because Gabby pulled something out of me when we were having just a one-on-one, like, getting to know each other after is and I can't wait to talk about, my journey in starting a mom's group, which
Hmm.
came from a church wound and a motherhood group that I haven't even talked about, thought about because that healing journey was so long ago that I made sure to do
Yeah.
that work through that. But I'm excited to share that because I know I hear those stories
Mhm.
time and time again. And through purpose, there is healing after it. So, and again,
Yes.
worth and boundaries.
Yes, yes. Well, I mean, and I'll end on this. Why these conversations are important is because at the end of the day, Maslow's hierarchy of need, it's a basic sense of belonging. Like we need that, right? And
Yeah.
where do people go when they're looking for a place of belonging? It is a community. It's sometimes, it is a church. How do we make sure we are finding a healthy place to belong? What to look for? How do our bodies feel? Because
They'll tell us.
unfortunately, a lot of times we're not. If we had dealt with a lot of trauma, we will gaslight ourselves, or we'll not listen to our bodies. And so these conversations are very helpful, just to give people real tools on how to navigate finding safe places to belong, because you do matter.
You do. And Gabby and I are going to continue to work on creating those safe spaces. I will make sure to put in the show notes how to reach out to Gabby. She does coaching. We have our upcoming women's um conference. It's going to have a much more
Mhm.
beautiful name than that soon to be continued.
Yes.
And it is
Yeah.
actually going to be free to the public, which we are
Hmm.
so immensely grateful for. So we're going to continue that
Yes.
conversation in that conference as well. And thank you again so much for connecting with us and sharing your story today and all of these nuggets. And I can't wait to talk to you again. Have a beautiful rest of your
Yes.
day.
Thank you, Megan.
Thank you so much for listening today. I hope you gained what you needed to hear today. Healing isn't about erasing the past, it's about the strength of moving forward. If today's episode resonated with you, take a moment to share it with someone you love, because when we share with love, we help to break the stigma together. If you want to connect with me and learn more about what we're doing over at Mental Summit to break these stigmas, please connect with me over at mymentalsummit.com. Keep showing up, keep growing, keep going together, and remember, you're not alone in this.